HMP Kirkham is a prison in name only. In reality, it's a leaking pipe, where men walk out with ease, staff look the other way, and the idea of rehabilitation has been stretched so thin it's become meaningless. Located in Lancashire, this open Category D establishment is supposed to be a place of trust, preparation, and community reintegration. Instead, it's now a glaring example of what happens when trust is given without structure, when risk is ignored, and when a prison is abandoned to drift under its own crumbling weight. With a population of over 500 men, Kirkham was never meant to be high security, but open prisons still require order, and order is the one thing that has spectacularly collapsed. In the last year alone, 34 prisoners absconded. 34. That's nearly 3 a month simply walking off the grounds. Some were on temporary release, others were in work placements. A few never returned at all. In one shocking case, a man released on ROTL to attend a funeral was later found dealing drugs. Another vanished into the wind. No follow-up, no accountability, and no consequence. The prison's response: paperwork. There is no serious risk assessment system in place. The ROTL board, when it does meet, is disorganized and fails to vet placements properly. Employers aren't always checked. Housing plans are vague. In one case, a prisoner was approved for ROTL to a hostel that didn't exist. And when someone does abscond, the debriefing is often late or completely missing. It's not just that the gate is open, it's that nobody's watching it. Staff inside the prison have stopped trying. Inspectors described a culture of passivity, where officers no longer feel empowered to challenge behavior. Rules are inconsistently applied. Some prisoners skip work, refuse instructions, or breach basic expectations, and nothing happens. Officers shrug. Governors shuffle paperwork. No one wants to rock the boat. This is not a prison preparing men for life after custody. It's a lay-by on the road to nowhere. Prisoners, for their part, have learned how to exploit the system. They understand that supervision is weak, that absconding carries little risk, and that most of the staff don't care. Many are bored, disengaged, and restless. The regime offers very little in terms of routine. Education is underused. Vocational workshops are frequently cancelled due to staff shortages or disinterest. The prison garden, a rare bright spot, is only accessible to a limited number of men, and those not working or studying. They roam, sit, smoke, plot, sleep. Facilities are outdated. The accommodation is split across old RAF buildings, many of which are run down and lack basic privacy. There are broken fixtures, poor ventilation, and some cells where prisoners must navigate leaks, damp and freezing conditions. Showers are shared, limited, and often dirty. There are not enough laundry services. Canteen stock is unpredictable. The gym is poorly staffed and open at odd hours. Even the chapel, once a refuge for reflection, is underused due to staff constraints. Drugs are widespread. While not as chaotic as some closed prisons, Kirkham has its own ecosystem of supply, debt, and intimidation. Cannabis, spice, Subutex, and alcohol are the drugs of choice. With poor security infrastructure, little in the way of intelligence-led searches, and limited drug testing, many prisoners use freely and frequently. The healthcare unit has flagged increased cases of withdrawal, dependency, and mental health deterioration, but there's no consistent drug strategy to tackle it. Mental health care is nearly non-existent. The waiting list to see a mental health professional can stretch weeks. Counselling is ad hoc. There is no neurodiversity screening, no trauma-informed care, and little understanding of how addiction, PTSD, or learning disabilities affect behaviour. Prisoners with complex needs are placed in general population with no tailored plan. One man, clearly in crisis, was described by staff as just difficult. Another, with a diagnosed personality disorder, was seen once in 3 months. Vulnerable men are being ignored, and some are spiralling into self-harm and suicidal ideation in plain view. Through the gate preparation is dismal. Men due for release within weeks still have no ID, no accommodation, and no link to probation. The resettlement team is underpowered and overwhelmed. There are no real job fairs, no long-term planning, and no engagement with family support services. One prisoner told inspectors, "I'll get out the same way I came in, with nothing and no one." Another said he hadn't spoken to a caseworker in over 2 months. These aren't exceptions, they are standard. Leadership at HMP Kirkham appears either deluded or defeated. The governor insists progress is being made, citing a handful of successful ROTL cases and new strategy documents. But documents don't change culture. The people who live and work in this prison know the truth. The staff feel unsupported, the prisoners feel forgotten, and the public, they're left exposed, because when nearly 36 men walk out of prison in a year, and some never return, that's not just a scandal, that's a breakdown in public safety. And make no mistake, Kirkham isn't a soft touch because it's open. It's a soft touch because no one is enforcing the rules. It's a prison where consequences don't exist, where disengaged prisoners are preparing for release with no structure, where staff tolerate failure because leadership does too. This is a place that has lost its identity, its purpose, and its credibility. So now ask yourself, what happens when an open prison becomes a revolving door with no control? How many more men will vanish before someone steps in? Are we preparing prisoners for society, or training them to manipulate a broken system? And if we can't even manage low-risk prisoners properly, what does that say about the rest of the justice system? Let us know what you think, because HMP Kirkham isn't just a failing institution, it's a case study in what happens when nobody is watching anymore. A prison governor who had a relationship with a drug-dealing gang boss has been jailed for 9 years. Kerry Pegg, 42, was seen as a rising star of the prison service, climbing the career ladder from graduate to governor at HMP Kirkham in Lancashire in 6 years. But her trial heard she didn't play by the rules and began a relationship with major Liverpool crime figure Anthony Saunderson, helping him secure day release. Sentencing her at Preston Crown Court, Judge Graham Knowles KC told her, "You betrayed the public trust in you, and you betrayed the prison service." He continued, "It was shocking and unconscionable that you should have had that relationship. You knew how you should and should not act. You had training and support. You were warned and you were challenged. The boundaries were clear and explicit and you knew you were crossing them." How EncroChat crackdown uncovered Kerry Pegg's affair. Miss Pegg, from Up Holland in Lancashire, was convicted of misconduct in public office and possession of criminal property following a trial at the same court in April. The jury heard how, when police raided Miss Pegg's home in Orrell, Wigan, they found a toothbrush with Saunderson's DNA on it. It also emerged Miss Pegg, who was also found guilty of 1 count of possession of criminal property, had been given a £12,000 Mercedes C-Class car by Mr. Saunderson, which was paid for from the proceeds of 34 kilos of amphetamines. During his communications with other criminals, Saunderson, who is now spending 35 years behind bars, had used the name Jesse Pinkman after a meth dealer in the hit TV show Breaking Bad. The trial heard he also went under the name James Gandolfini, the actor who played Tony Soprano in the Mafia TV series. Jurors heard Miss Pegg was known to spend a lot of time in her office with the inmate, and in October 2018 he put in a request to be released on temporary license. Though such requests are routine, there are specific rules for how they should be dealt with, rules which the governor broke. Detectives found Miss Pegg, originally from Bramhall, Stockport, was living way beyond her means, buying designer jewellery and clothes, including Jimmy Choo shoes and Chanel necklaces. They found that despite her £3,000 a month income, she was deeply in debt and had not declared 3 county court judgments, which amounted to misconduct, as debts make officials vulnerable to corruption. Her 4 credit cards were maxed out, the court heard, and she had just 6 pence in her savings account. Judge Knowles said the fact she had not declared the county court judgments left her catastrophically compromised and vulnerable to corruption and blackmail. He added that Miss Pegg was impossibly vulnerable to Mr. Saunderson once she started in her dereliction of duty, because she knew he could destroy your career. Police found at Miss Pegg's house a pair of Hugo Boss flip-flops with Mr. Saunderson's DNA on them. In addition to the 9-year sentence for the first charge of misconduct in public office, Miss Pegg was sentenced to 2 years prison for the second misconduct charge and 4 years for accepting criminal property, all to be served concurrently. Miss Pegg was arrested in late 2020 following a police investigation into Mr. Saunderson's communications on the encrypted messaging system Lancashire. Officers found messages from Mr. Saunderson which included references to Kerry and to buying a Mercedes for his girlfriend. Mr. Saunderson also joked with associates about driving around with Peggy in her new car. Miss Pegg was arrested with the Mercedes parked outside her house, the court heard. She also had a burner mobile phone she used solely to communicate with Mr. Saunderson. Miss Pegg joined the prison service in 2012 as a graduate entrant, working at prisons including Risley, Liverpool and Style, and by April 2018 she was a governor at HMP Kirkham, where Mr. Saunderson was reaching the end of a 10-year sentence for drugs offences. He had been one of Merseyside's most wanted fugitives for his part in importing cocaine with a street value £19 million in shipments of corned beef from Argentina. Miss Pegg's trial heard Mr. Saunderson had developed and delivered a program titled BADD Beating Alcohol and Drug Dependency for inmates at several jails while he was still actively involved in drug dealing running an amphetamines factory. Mr. Saunderson was released from HMP Kirkham in May 2019 and within 2 months, while still on licence, was involved in another massive drug conspiracy. Miss Pegg's trial heard he continued contact with prisons in the BADD program and was also still close to Miss Pegg, who was at the time the regional official coordinating drug strategy in 6 prisons in the northwest. Even members of his gang grumbled that their boss was spending too much time with Miss Pegg, neglecting his wife and work, the court heard. Taryn McCaffrey from the Crown Prosecution Service said Miss Pegg's actions in becoming involved with a prisoner who had committed serious drug offences portrayed a total lack of integrity or judgment. She displayed a shocking lack of professionalism in her role, overriding rules around Saunderson's temporary release and ignoring her obligations to declare personal debts. Dayton's Brian Morley from the Northwest Regional Organised Crime Unit's Prison Intelligence Unit said, Kerry Pegg was a senior figure within the prison service, a public servant expected to behave to the highest standards, but this was serious misconduct on her part and greatly undermines the trust given to prison staff and order in a prison. Miss Pegg's defence barrister, Andrew Alty, told the court his client had been taken advantage of by a sophisticated criminal. He said she was a caring, compassionate individual who tries to see the best in everyone. Phil Coppell, Chief Executive of HM Prison and Probation Service, said, the criminal misconduct in this case lets down the public we serve, as well as the vast majority of honest and hard-working prison staff, but it also demonstrates our determination to take robust action against those who failed to achieve proper professional standards.